at the end of
Okay,
the
we're gonna get started, like, full finance committee meeting in order.
generated 150.
Hey, Ron.
Right.
Sorry, hello. We'll get started.
Get me distracted.
I didn't say a word.
We're gonna make you read it.
I was listening.
All right, we're gonna get started. Resolution number 1, authorization for DSS to fill the following positions, and there's a list of them.
Move it. Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 2, authorization for the chairman of the board of supervisors to enter into an agreement on behalf of the Columbia County Department of Social Services with Lisa George.
Move it. Hold on.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye. Who's second?
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. Jim, you're not on the committee.
Yeah, just because.
Oh, that's right.
It's only
I
finance.
seconded it.
Okay, it's only finance and you
It
guys.
sounded
know.
like me, but it sounded like me, but.
Then I'm a ventriloquist, I threw it to him.
Okay, resolution number 3, authorization for the health department to contract with Jay McGinnis and
Move it.
Associates.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 4, authorization for OFA to roll over and add to the approved funds of 2023.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 5, effective 5/15/25. Authorization.
Move it. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 6, authorization for the Department of Human Services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 7, authorization for the Department of Human Services to contract with Dr. Abaso
Second.
Yasin Khan. We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 8, authorization for the Department of Human Services to contract with
Move it.
Rutgers College.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're going to move on to public safety. Resolution number 9, authorization to accept a
Move it.
grant from
Second.
New York State. We have a motion,
We had a motion in second.
motion and a second, in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 10, authorization to accept funding.
Move it. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 11, authorization to contract with Robert Lopez for training and monitoring. in the dynamic-
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 12, Agricultural Society for the Columbia County Emergency Medical Requests.
Move it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 13, effective 5/17/2025.
Move it. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 14, effective 5/31/2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 15, effective 6/14/2025.
Move it.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 16, effective 6/28/2025.
Move it.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 17, adopting and issuing a home rule request to New York State Legislature in respect to Senate Bill S-6820. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 18, authorization to purchase bicycles for the new sheriff
Move
office
it.
bike patrol.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. With a pulled resolution number 19.
Actually, you know what, Jim?
Excuse me?
Yeah, you can keep that in, just can we add language in there that we're gonna use New York State contract or do a mini bid and then we can leave it in.
Okay, so we're gonna go back to resolution number 19, authorization, the fire coordinator to purchase one 2025 Chevy 3500, and you're gonna use it through the mini bid system,
Yep.
you're saying?
Move it. Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, county government, resolution number 20, authorization for the human resources manager
Move it.
to issue. We have a motion,
Second.
second, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution number 21.
Chairman Guzzi, could we discuss this before
Sure.
motion?
So I apologize, I was not here, Mr. County Government. My understanding is that the proposed resolution will be amended to pull out Board of Elections for
Correct.
now. And because that's not the way it went out, would the motion need to be to approve the resolution minus Board of Elections? That's an attorney question, I think.
I think that's the way it's drafted now. The
Oh.
payroll policy was modified to pull it out, right, Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah.
The one that went out to us? I didn't see that.
No, it's been amended.
But that's not the version that the supervisors got. So
Correct.
shouldn't we acknowledge that we're not adopting what was sent out, or does it not?
Well, you're passing it through finance. It only has to go through one committee, and that was a change as a result of county government's discussion, I think.
Okay,
So I'm good with it.
okay.
Well, I think to piggyback, I haven't, what are the changes? Could you describe the changes that were made to the policy?
I wasn't involved in it. Maybe the chairman can, or HR director is here if we need him.
I mean, a lot of the changes, for example, now everybody, doesn't get to charge for lunch. Everybody automatically gets a lunch. What was happening in some cases that people were saying they worked through lunch and then they would use that time at the end of the week to take part of the day or a day off. We're not going to allow that anymore, because when you look at it, they're using that time instead of using accruals. And then if somebody retires, we're going to pay them out for their accruals. So at the higher rate once they retire. So things of that nature. We reduced the amount of comp time that some can earn. Again, we've taken the Board of Elections out of this process for now. So, I mean, all of which were basically due not to harm the employees, but at the same time, try to save the county money in terms of, paying out at the end of some of these time accounts.
So is there any grandfathering? Like I know in the town of New Lebanon, when we make
No,
amendments to
anybody,
personnel
we're not
policy-
taking anybody's time away.
No, I understand. So in the town of New Lebanon, if we do amendments to personnel policy or insurance, like we went from the town paying 100% to the town paying 80%, employees who had been hired when it was 80% got to, or 100% got to keep that.
Mhm.
So I hear you say we're not taking things away from employees. If I was an employee and I was allowed to bank 500 hours of comp time, and then you say to me, now you're only allowed to bank 250, as an employee, I would feel like you were taking something away from me. So my question is this for new hires as of the date of this resolution being passed, or are we taking comp time away from current employees?
We're not going to take anything away from current employees, but they're not going to be able, they'll have to, as they use their time, they're not going to go above a certain level.
But we are changing the amount of allowable banked time
Correct.
for current employees.
Correct. But we're not taking anything away. If they have 500 hours, which I don't believe anybody would, they would still get a chance to spend that down.
How much time would they have to spend it down?
Good question.
Because I also don't want to put offices in a situation where if an office has a lot of, not old, like age-wise employees, but have been here a long time employees. And if as an employee, you tell me, if you don't use 250 hours of comp time by the end of the year, you lose it, I'm going to take a lot of comp time. And what if 10 people in an office are now having to take 250 hours of comp time between now and the end of the year? That could potentially harm that office. So for me, I would need to make sure that we've talked to all the department heads, looked at the employees. I usually cannot support something that takes things away from employees. I feel like our employees are already underpaid, and I get wanting to save money, but cutting benefits to me is not the answer to that.
Well, we're not cutting anybody's benefits.
I would disagree. I would say taking the amount of comp time, like in New Lebanon, we just increased the amount of comp time through a union negotiation because that's something that the employees wanted as a increased benefit. So I hear that that's your perspective. I disagree. I think if you're saying,
I just texted the HR director to come down and explain this a little
okay,
clearer than I can.
It's mostly management, not you.
No, it's all management. It's not you.
You show us the union contract.
Yeah, we still have, we're not changing union contracts. This is just management employees.
I mean, I still think we should take care of our management employees and department head.
Mike,
I mean,
I think everybody here does.
hey, Matt, is Michael coming down?
Yes.
Just,
Yes, we come down.
okay,
You wanna
so
table this?
why don't I move on
Yeah.
and then we'll hold off on 19. We'll go to 22, okay? Authorization for real property to enter into a contract with Repeat Business Systems a lease of one folder insert machine.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Public Works, resolution number 23, authorization to purchase two 2026 Western Star.
Move it. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Any idea when they're coming in? Any, like, potential date on?
Yeah, we did get dates and.
2026.
What it was now.
2 years? Yeah, I was just wondering, because we still have other ones that night.
Right, it's not gonna be, we were told it's not gonna be near as long as the other two that we ordered, that were, one is here, and one is still 2 years out or something, or been 2 years, but these are supposed to be quicker than that.
Good. Resolution number 24,
Move it.
authorization to
Second.
motion in a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Resolution number 25, authorization for the chairman of the Columbia County Board of Supervisors and Commissioner of Public Works.
Move it.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Resolution number 26, authorization for the chairman of Columbia County Board of Supervisors execute a professional service agreement with Creighton Manning Inc.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Resolution number 27, authorization for the chairman of the Columbia County Board of Supervisors to execute a professional services agreement with Green Peterson Inc. We have a motion.
Yep.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Resolution number 28, authorization for the chairman of Columbia County Board of Supervisors to execute any and all documents necessary to convey county-owned lands identified as a portion of tax parcel.
Move it. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Resolution number 29, authorization for facilities to fill one vacant full-time labor position.
Move it.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That's fine.
Yep.
What do you have?
I'm gonna just move over here.
I know, but
Oh,
29 on the screen is
30
authorization
is
to make changes.
facilities to abolish.
Okay, they're backwards.
Okay,
That's okay.
so we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Yeah, aye.
Opposed, carried. So now we're gonna go to 30, which
Yeah.
is your 29. Okay.
Yeah.
Authorization for facilities to abolish one maintenance worker position.
Move it. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Resolution number 31, authorization to support the extended responsibility legislation. Amend the environmental conservation law in relation to enacting
Move it.
packaging reduction and recycling.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 32, authorization for the chairman of the Board of Supervisors to enter into 1-year extension with the current contract for New England Waste.
Move it. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Finance, resolution number 33, authorization to accept the dormitory or authority, state of New York Community Resiliency, Economic Sustainability and Technology Program grant to purchase equipment for grant funds. We have a motion to
I already
second.
made it, yeah. You didn't have a second.
Wait, I didn't-
We just wanted to hear you read it.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion.
Aye. And a second.
A second, all
I
in
didn't hear
favor?
either.
Aye.
So we're.
I was the motion and
They weren't
history
gonna
was
tell
the
you.
second.
Okay.
You want to read it again or?
They whispered, they were whispering.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So the use of a gazebo, 5/3/45 for a wedding.
Move it. Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
This
Opposed?
generally goes to Public Works, but it's short notice, so.
Okay, so we're gonna go back to resolution number 19.
21.
21.
21, yes. That's for the modify the Columbia County Uniform Payroll Policies and Procedures. And Michael, I wonder if you could help us out, explain some of the changes and stuff.
How do you want me to do this?
Yeah, just come on up if you'd like, or.
Yeah.
Come on up.
Read all that?
You can spread out here.
Nice to hear it there.
Sure.
You can have this
Oh,
one.
please, press it up. So I'm be running up. Perfect. Okay.
So Michael, the question came
Oh,
up
so you're being deposed.
about, removing accruals. Are people going to lose accruals? You know, if someone had 500 hours, does this policy cut them right down to 200? So there's some mechanics that they'll ask you questions on. That's what we're looking
Absolutely,
for. You
sure.
don't have to start unless you want with a whole explanation of the whole policy. Because this policy, if you remember, was generated as a result of the New York State Controller's audits in 2010, 11, 12.
Exactly.
And the points in it were specifically to address their concerns. So those were mandated there. And as it has grown, and as the Tyler Munis system and the time clock systems, as bugs are found, Michael brings these to kind of fix those issues.
I believe this is the fourth or the fifth time that we've changed the
I was
policy.
gonna say, this policy's been revised 4 separate times. So the purpose of this was it was raised to my office from a new management employee who said there was nowhere to go and actually understand what my benefits are. So we explained to them that certainly under board resolution, I don't even know what year it was decades ago. Management are subject to accruals through the UPSU contract, but there are different levels of management, exempt, non-exempt. So understanding this person raised the question about, well, if you're a certain type of management, you're subject to certain types of vacation versus I am not. They were under the impression that they would get the same type of vacation accruals that a department head would get. And we said, no, that's not, because you're not a department head. So they said, well, it would be really nice if there was policy that would include these types of things, because we are subject to the bargaining agreement, but they don't think of themselves as union employees. So it's not a reference for tool that they would utilize in order to get that information. So part of this policy revision was to take a look at, all right, so if an individual is of a non-bargaining unit class, let's put in appendices for every single individual to be assigned for some sort of understanding, whether they're management, NBU, which is non-bargaining unit, or are they exempt, which means that they are exempt from overtime under the Fair Labor Standards Act, or are they subject to overtime, which is traditionally an hourly employee, which would be non-exempt. So the revised schedules that were on the attached portion broke every individual position, whether it be per diem, part-time, or full-time, that was not subject to being a union covered position was assigned to schedule. Okay, so that was the first part of it. Then this individual had asked questions in regards to, as I mentioned before, vacation. So we did revisions based on here as to if you are of a certain category, being management exempt, then you're subject to, this is how you accrue, because your vacation time is front loaded, versus an individual that falls under a different classification has to work the full year, get assigned on the January 1st, they get prorated, those types of things, which is subject to how our largest collective bargaining agreement, which I keep referencing UPSU, that's our largest collective bargaining agreement that the county has. So certain levels of management would be subject to that. So there's kind of a number of things that are involved in here. So I just want to go back to what Rob had said. When you talk about losing accruals, is there a question in regards to that I could actually, like, what's the specific question?
So my understanding is that this new policy reduces the amount of comp time that can be accrued.
Comp time is for hourly employees
Discretionary
paid
time.
under the Fair Labor.
Discretionary time.
Oh, DTO, I'm sorry, okay. So traditionally, when you have, and Rob said it, as far as the point of the creation of this policy was looking at individuals who back then, thought that they were owed time off because they thought that they were putting down time that was never approved by it. So as a part of this policy and the creation back in 2014, it was the county get an electronic timekeeping system. And as a result of that, all time is monitored by the timekeeping system. This way, there's no arguing with anyone whether you worked it, because not only do you punch in and out, but it's approved by some sort of governing body, whether that is your department head or it's, someone, a committee that you respond to, the chairman, whomever. It's approved by someone who is of a position higher than the one that you have. Okay. And then it was also decided at that point who were individuals who were in like an auto pay status, because they may be someone who gets, I don't know, certain categories of how they call it, a part-time department head. They get a flat rate, so they don't necessarily punch. Those types of things were all worked out in 2014. So as far as what you're referring to with DTO, under New York State and the Fair Labor Standards Act, if you are an exempt management person, you work the amount of hours that are responsible for doing your position. So if you're working 40 hours, you're getting paid whatever your agreed salary is on. If that week it takes you 70 hours to do your job, you're still going to get paid for what is your salary for that job. The creation of this allowed for department heads to still have discretionary time because it needed to be clarified exactly what DTO was and who was eligible for it. So as a part of that, there are positions that are by charter, it was my understanding, some by charter, and some of them are actually by council, where you could have, like say Kelly's position, sorry Kelly, but like, where she performs function outside of her regular day. So her doing meetings on nights, her doing things on weekends are legitimate DTO. So in this, it outlined previously that she would get approval in order to have that. She had a sheet, she had to get signed by them. But for some reason, when they create this, the people like, let's say myself, if I'm working on nights or if I was working weekends, the time clock and policy would automatically just allow me to accrue DTO. So we sat down and said, why should she be subject to an approval process and I wouldn't be subject to an approval process? It gets approved when the person approves my time clock. But if anyone was to question what I was doing, it's not anywhere on that sheet. So this process is going back and saying everyone has to go through the process of being approved and it needs to be signed off on. Okay. And then as far as DTO was concerned, we took a look at how much annual DTO was earned during the time period. Okay. And then seeing that the individuals who originally it was put at 70 and 80. So it was a 2-week amount of time that was put on there. And then so 70 for a 35-hour week and 80 for a 40-hour week. When we reviewed all of these painful time cards, we saw that people would be, there's an outline for how DTO has to be approved. And that is on not working through your lunches because we are required to take lunches. So you shouldn't be working through your lunches and getting DTO for that, okay? Unless it's signed off by your supervisor, all right, or your immediate department head. Or in the case of a department head, going to the chairman and or the chairman of the home board, okay? And then looking at potentially who outside of that is earning discretionary time off and how they are earning that.
So that all makes sense to me. I mean, New York State labor law says they have to carve out for a lunch break. So obviously, we as the county aren't allowed to say they're not what they have. My question is, the amount of DTO allowed to be accrued, is this change reducing that total amount?
So DTO is earned differently depending on the category that you're in. So if you're like my position I do not have unlimited DTO. I'm not in a position that is warranted to have a significant amount of after-hour things in order for me to do that. Okay, so my position was subject to 74, and that's been decreased in this policy down to 35. Because when you look at non-chartered or however the wording is for the law of those positions, we're really not even subject to any DTO. But the policy would be subject to allowing us to have extra compensation for those additional responsibilities that we would do. So if I was, say, staying after because I have a meeting the next day that I need to prep for, that's not DTO. It's not responsibilities or job performances that are being performed in additional to my traditional responsibilities that happen. So if the chairman or any supervisor said to me, hey, listen, I need you on a Saturday to attend some sort of meeting or, fly down to Florida or whatever the situation was, which I would live in, by the way. That would be
The meeting,
Las
not
Vegas,
Florida.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. Las Vegas. That would be something above and beyond my traditional responsibilities. So that would be a discretionary time.
So 70 is now down to 35, so then it's 80 now down to 40.
Yeah.
So 2 questions. In New Lebanon, when we do changes to personnel policies, insurance, those sorts of things, we typically grandfather existing employees. So when we went from the town covering 100% of health insurance premiums to 80%, anyone that was hired on or before the date we made that change still gets 100% of their insurance covered.
Okay.
could we consider for the accrued time? Because I hear the chairman say we're not taking benefits away. As an employee, if I used to be able to get 70 and now I can only get 35, I view that as a benefit being taken away.
So
from me.
there is no accrued time, because what happens is any individuals, like using myself as an example, at the end of the year, it goes away. If I don't use it, it goes. It's not a benefit that I continue to get to keep. There's two separate groups for DTO. The example that I used for the individuals who are part of the other category, which would be your, say, your board of elections commissioners, your deputies in the clerk's office, Kelly civil service works on Saturdays. They have to do the additional hours. So those types of positions are a different category from standard department heads, like say myself or Tony DeMarco. Well, Tony DeMarco's not a good example. I'm sorry, because he has highway stuff. I'm trying to think. Bob Gibson as commissioner of the Department of Social Services. Dan Omasi as the leader of our Department of Mental Health. So those are positions that would have specified after hours that we would serve. Okay. So the balances for the individuals of those other positions stay at the 240. That is where the cap is. It's at 240. And if they reach 240 discretionary hours, they are then automatically paid out. They cannot go over that cap, but it is replenishable. So for myself, with the 35 hours, we looked at how many people in those categories weren't earning more than 35 or 40. The 70 and 80 was just kind of established at the beginning to say, okay, this is a 2-week period. And then we reviewed what those hours were. Because remember, I mean, as a part of this also, if we are performing those extra responsibilities that are outside of our jobs, then we could certainly come to the chairman of our home committee and Kippy, you know, we're down there. Like, you know, I could go to say, you know, Kippy, who is the chairperson of county government, and give him a DTO form and say, I'm accruing additional DTO because I'm serving for
It
this.
seemed like we're just cleaning this up, putting a better perspective on everything.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And
That's
again,
where
all of
it's at.
that's fine, but you are decreasing the, so there are employees, I'm sure, that currently use the 70 or 80. Otherwise, why would we change it? If everyone's using 35 or 40 anyway, why would we change it? So there's going to be employees that are affected. And if I'm a 20-year employee and every year I take 2 weeks off at Christmas, I take 80 hours on a 40-hour-a-week employee because my office is slow, and I've done it for the last 20 years or however many years since 2014. Again, as a longtime employee, this is what I'm used to. And you now say, no, you can't go above 40, so now you can only take a week off.
So I appreciate that. And I am responsible. We also get 5 weeks of vacation. So certainly if we're using PTO or whatever the amount of time that is allotted, we have a significant amount of time that we are also able to earn and automatically get and can roll over based on that.
I understand, but we are still changing what's currently there and making it less. We still have vacation. I get all that. We are taking our current benefit policy and we are making it less for some people. And my point is, I can only support this if we grandfather the current employees that are used to doing it a certain way for 10 years. And any new employee can only go to 35 or 40. I can get behind that. The lunch breaks, all those things you talked about, absolutely. Let's change those things. But reducing the amount of time that can be accrued, I think, is a decrease in benefits. And if we want to change that for new hires, I get it. They get hired in knowing you can't go more than 40. But I feel strongly that our employees that have been here a long time, that are used to being able to accrue a certain amount of DTO, have ways that they use it. We're voting to change that.
So just a budgetary point here. So those employees, they accrue that time and they use it, like you said, a Christmas vacation every year. So then they retire and they have all this vacation time that we're then paying it out for at a much higher rate than what they earned it. So budgetarily, it's not, doesn't make good sense.
I understand, but my point is if we're going to change policies to make it, if we're saving money, it means the employees are getting less. That's the only way it can happen. If the county is doing this to save money, it means the employees are somehow getting less because in everything we pay out to them, whether it's through accrued vacation, DTO, we're saving money by giving less money to employees. So if we're going to make that change because we need to tighten the belt, okay, but I don't think we should do it for current employees that have been here a long time. I think like New Lebanon does, we should say from this point forward, we're tightening the belt and your employees, your benefits aren't quite as good. because we're making these changes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to move this forward, see where the vote comes. So,
Yes, anyone else have any other discussion first? If not,
I just have a quick question. About how many people is this actually affect?
Or off the top of my head.
Right.
a couple dozen.
No. I mean, you're talking management is every department head, every deputy, every part-time per diem, every,
it's kind of balancing it out, right? You know,
yeah. It's a couple hundred people, I would think.
wow.
I would have to pull that up.
Should you have, like,
Yeah, I mean, I think we should have a policy that is clear, and that's what I appreciated when it came to county government, is that, look, we've had this gap, like, we're updating the policies. I like the idea of putting it out there and making it explicit. And I voted for it in faith with this idea that we were just putting what our current practices were onto paper. I didn't realize that we were making some changes that some of the non-bargaining unit employees wouldn't like. So I was surprised that, like, the day after we voted on it, I got a call from someone who was like, wait a second, I took this job with the idea that I had these benefits, which is part of the way I get compensated.
And by the way, they've been pulled out of this right now.
Right. So I appreciate that. But in some ways, I felt a little blindsided. I just didn't understand what we were doing. And I guess I still had this concern of that, somebody had a concern, they're being pulled aside. But I guess I'm still wondering in my head is like, who else could be in this category where they feel like they couldn't or wouldn't do their job under this policy. And so I guess I'm at a place where I feel like I don't have enough information. Like I wasn't given the choice points of like, this might cause some tension with this employee or with
well,
this
I think
department.
that person also has a right to go to their committee chair or chairman and
Yep.
and be able to explain the reason why. So at this point, I'm just gonna move this on, as far as the vote goes, resolution number 21.
Ronnie,
I need a motion. Do I have a
I
motion?
made a motion. Somebody needs to second it. We'll take it to a vote.
A motion,
second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I'm going to abstain. I still don't have enough information.
Carried. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make that. Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
All right.
If I could have everyone's attention, please. We brought you here today because we wanted to give you an update on what's going on with our STR moving forward in terms of the county occupancy tax, as well as what the state of New York is up to. And I will say, though we supported the state of New York and their law, it has complicated things for Columbia County, and we've been working through it. PJ Keeler, Jim Gray, Brenda, more recently, Donald has jumped on board, but I think we're getting there. And I was going to ask Brenda to sort of walk through where we are. So Brenda?
I'd be happy to do that. So we have a series of important dates coming up. On May 1st, we hope to send a launch letter out to all of the Columbia County short-term rentals that we've identified through the Granicus research. And that letter will notify them of the registration requirement. And it will meet our commitment to notifying them 30 days in advance of our implementation date. In early May, the chairman will be sending out a press release that will announce the implementation of the tax. And then on June 1st, 2025, the occupancy tax collection will begin for all short-term rentals. On July 1st of 2025, and we can send this to you in writing, we'll be sending short-term rental hosts, including hotels, motels, and bed and breakfast, a first notice letter, which would be a registration follow-up letter. And then 30 days later, we'll send them a second notice, which would be a little more firmly worded. It would be a notice of non-compliance. And then on September 1st, we would send them a final notice and a notice of violation of the need to register with the county. And in terms of who needs to register, this is going to be a written document which we can communicate or share with you. All individuals or business entities that rent their building or rooms in their building to be used on a short-term basis, which in Columbia County is defined as 30 days, must register and pay the tax. And if they own multiple properties for rental, they must do a separate registration for each individual property. The registration for this will be online, and we're working now with the technology people with MIS to create a link for a new website, which we hope to be able to distribute shortly. And if they have questions or require assistance to register, they can contact the treasurer's office, and we'll provide a phone number and a dedicated email for that purpose. We're asking that they register within 30 days, and that registrations after 30 days could be subject to penalties. We're reminding them that the law requires that they register every 2 years, and if subject to any changes to contact or ownership information, or if they add or delete rentals, and in which case we would ask that they notify the county as soon as possible. We've also asked, we expect to be asked if they've already registered for a permit with their town or village, would they still be required to file with the county? And the answer to that is yes, because the permit with the town or village will set out the conditions under which they're allowed to operate in that town or village, but it will not satisfy the requirements to register with the county for tax purposes. And I think, as you all know, the tax that was approved by New York State is 4%. And that effective date of that tax will be June 1st, 2025. And there may be some confusion. I've already had to field questions on this about the collection of sales tax versus the occupancy tax. The occupancy tax will be collected effective June 1st, but New York State did begin collecting sales tax as of March 1st. So the New York sales tax will be collected and remitted separately to New York State or its agent. There have been other questions about what do I do about bookings? If someone booked a rental before June 1st, do I have to collect tax on that rental? And that has to do with when the payment is collected. If the occupancy tax was paid for if the occupancy or rental was paid for prior to June 1st, there will be no 4% tax collected. But if the room was reserved before June 1st and paid after June 1st, the tax will have to be collected and paid. We're hoping that all payments will be made through the Columbia County website. And again, we're going to provide that link. And when at the completion of the registration, each host will be provided with a registration number that will allow them to log in and pay taxes. And again, we're going to supply the treasurer's office phone number and email for any questions about registration or how to pay. This is a question, the next question is an issue that's come up and is associated with the New York State law. And it says, may I pay the occupancy tax through Airbnb or another web-based platform? At the present time, Columbia County does not have an agreement with Airbnb to collect these taxes. And the Airbnb is not issuing or negotiating any new agreements until they work out certain issues with New York State. So if the county wanted to have an agreement with Airbnb, we'd have to opt out of the New York State agreement, which, Matt, I don't think we're prepared to do at this moment, are we?
No.
Okay. So we've also, we can now also publish and provide a payment schedule for both 2025 and 2026, which, if you're familiar with the sales tax payment schedule, you'll know that they're in parallel with each other, both in terms of the collection period and when the payment is due. So that's, I think, the information that we're prepared to distribute generally to short-term rental hotel and motel operators. Are there any questions about that information?
Brenda, this is per New York State, correct? Because of this is the rules that they changed, correct?
Yes.
So if anyone asks, it's not the county, it's not our town, it's the state,
Well, what it are you asking about?
Just in general, that they have to register at the county, that they have to do all of these things and then still then register with the town if the town has an STR law. But this is all predicated on the state's, New York State STR law, correct?
It is. Initially we'd hoped that the county would provide the baseline data, the address identification and the verification of owners to the towns, and that the towns would maintain their own databases. But the state law changed that. The state now requires the county to maintain that database. We'll share that information with towns and villages so they don't have to collect it. There's no redundancy in collecting that data. But the towns and villages will have to then work with the county to keep the county's database current. Because the county will have not only the tax collection obligation, but it will also have to meet the state reporting requirements for the maintenance of that database.
Brenda, it says here that we have to register every year or every 2 years?
Every
Or is
2
it-
years. And I sent out, if you're looking at the document, the draft document that I sent a revised document yesterday, and I'm sorry if that didn't get distributed in time.
Yeah, you just said every year, so it's every 2 years. That's what I said.
Years.
Okay,
It's every 2 years for the county one, but your town law might be.
that's different. I got
That's
you.
right.
And there's no charge for this to register?
No charge to the host, no. The
Brenda,
county, I'm
firstly,
sorry.
thank you for doing all of this, but sorry, I have one more question. The county collecting the occupancy tax, which, great, thank you. Was there other options for that? I just want to make sure so we have answers to everything. Is that part of the New York State STR, or that's just how the county decided to do it?
So we've worked with several other counties, and we understand that there are 3 collection methods: that the county collects it, or they use a web-based platform to collect it, or there's a hybrid model. At the moment, though, because of the New York State law, Airbnb is not signing agreements to collect for counties. And it's because the New York State is requiring Airbnb or other platforms to supply more information than Airbnb, more detailed information than Airbnb is comfortable in providing. So at the moment, we do not have an option to sign an agreement with Airbnb unless we opt out of the state plan, which it's not in our interest. It's not clear that it's in our interest to do that at this point. So yes, I would say the guiding principle for this is the state law.
If you remember, we passed a resolution, we wrote letters supporting the state laws. So it would be kind of bad form for us at this point to opt out.
Right. Now, Brenda, another thing I'm just looking at. So if the town adopts an STR law, right, in their planning and zoning, it's probably not a bad idea that we implement in our law that the county they need to get registered at the county. That should be almost part of our
Yeah, I mean,
local law.
They'll have to register at the county first, Jim. They'll have to register with the county first, and that registration number will then be provided to the town. So they'll have to register with the county for tax purposes first. The county will share that information with the town for its permit process.
But I'm just thinking that maybe it's not a bad idea just to put in our law to make sure that they know that it's being done like that. You know what I mean? On the local level.
Well,
Yeah, if you already adopted, maybe just put it in your
Yeah,
application.
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
It'll go out in terms of guidance. I'm not sure if it needs to be in the law.
Right, but just part of it.
Yeah, as people register with us, we can inform them.
Right,
If it's
right,
on-
online,
If it's on
you
the
know,
application
The
form.
checklist you got,
Yeah.
But Ron, there's an important issue there. We need to have a standard numbering system or labeling system for the collection of taxes. So only that numbering system can only be generated from a single source. And right now that source, it looks like the best source for that collection or assignment of a number would be with the county. Because if we had towns assigning numbers and the county assigning numbers, we could end up with duplicate numbers or incorrect numbers for any particular Airbnb. So that's why I think it's important that the registration process, if someone were to come into my code officer and say, I'd like to register for a permit for we'd say, well, we need to get you to register with the county first and come back to us with your registration number. Because then the county registration number will be used by the town as well. At least that's the operational plan that we have at the moment, that they would share that registration number. It would be common to both the town and the county.
And Brenda, I think what Jim's saying that I agree with is that on both the application, the press release that goes out to people, it should be clear that that is the process. County first, then town, bring that number to the town. That we just make sure that's on all the documents, on the press releases.
I think we could certainly do that. And that's covered in the more internal working process, which is the second part of this document. I think that gets into that level of detail.
What's the enforcement on this, or how's that gonna work? In regards to the county sends out this letter to the STRs that we get from Granicus, and Joe Blow says, I'm not registered and I'm just gonna keep operating. What happens?
Well, this is one of the issues that we're trying to work out that is again, a complication associated with the state law. The state law says that booking platforms will be required to see if these short-term rental hosts are registered with the county before posting the booking, and that they will not be able to post a booking for the property if not registered with the county. So that seems like a pretty stern measure or starting point, that if you can't post a booking on Airbnb unless you're registered, that seems to encourage people to register.
And so Airbnb, I'm assuming, is gonna go along?
That's one of the things that we're trying to finalize. I mean, or not to finalize, but to better understand. I did speak with Michelle Hinchy's office and asked them if they had understood that Airbnb was asking the county to opt out of the state law in order to move forward with the implementation of their own law, and that was not understood or well understood at the time. And I also have a question to them about this particular issue. How will the state work with Airbnb to ensure that that provision is enforced? And we don't have an answer for that yet.
And then if the individual does register with the county, doesn't register with a town, or doesn't go through the town's policy, that's incumbent upon the town to enforce it within their own town, correct?
It is, yes, it is. And that's one of the reasons the town may elect to purchase additional services from Granicus, because they could provide assistance with compliance, local compliance.
So there is, in the state law, there's, for the booking agencies, there is, I think, a $500 fine per day if they don't comply with the law. I don't know if it's per thing, so it is. And there's, with the Airbnb, but there's, I think they told us there's 70 different booking.
VRBO.
Yeah, one of them. Some we never heard of, probably. So we're gonna have to try and give them access or share that information of our database once we get it. And how we're doing that is unknown at this point.
Is that something Granicus would help with, since we're hiring them?
No. There's gonna be a lot of painful points here in the beginning for us to get started on this. And mostly it's because the state law came in and superseded what we were working on with Granicus. Okay, so we're trying to comply with the state regulations and also working with Granicus, the address identification, and there seems to be some overlap and mass confusion. Airbnb right now has every county in New York State in absolute chaos because they're all over the board. There's no answers. Nobody can get an answer from them as to what they're going to do or not going to do. But for the sake of leaving here today, if you at least understand that the registration is going to be online, it has to be done at the county first. And we chose to do that because originally we were going to have the towns do it. But then we decided not to do it that way because there needs to be consistency as far as registration numbers. And that would be an absolute nightmare if the towns did it as well.
Well, and
so registration at the county, permit at the town, or whatever municipality.
That makes it so much easier for the towns.
I think the other thing to note, just to circle back to Rob's question is, we had a pretty good handle on this until the bill was negotiated in late December. And that's when the governor signed a conditional approval, and the conditional approval included additional changes to the law. And that was negotiated, after we sent a letter of support for the law. So there were changes to the law that continued after after it was presented to us. So that's what we're really wrestling with now, is some of those changes. So has everybody had a chance to look at the additional points regarding the points to supervisors and mayors in terms of how it will be collected, what the fees are, and what the responsible duties are of each party? Are those clear?
Do we know what X and X are, projected occupancy tax revenues for 25, assuming a mid-year rollout, X amount to X amount?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I'll send the revised document. I did fill that in. A mid-year rollout, we think, is somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million for a 6-month rollout.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's it.
And one of the other issues that is kind of a gnarly issue for us is we were hoping that we were going to have actual usage data from each of the towns. It's not clear now whether or not we'll be able to get actual usage data from each town, or whether there'll be another basis for distribution, but we're waiting for that information to be, for an answer to that question.
And for those towns wishing to do more with Granicus than the baseline that will be done with chargeback, were we gonna continue with the chargeback, or is it gonna be a separate agreement?
Yes, because the relationship with Granicus has to do with tax collection, and anything that the relationship with the towns would have to be would be related to the local law, the local land use law, and compliance with that law. So it's 2 different scopes of work.
Right, but is it between the town and Granicus thereafter?
Yes. Well, no, there'll be both. There'll be an ongoing, for as long as it's considered to be useful, there would be a county relationship with Granicus. It may be after the first year or the second year, with some experience under our belt and with these questions answered, we may decide that we no longer require the services of Granicus or an equivalent. But whatever services that the towns would purchase, again, would be limited to those for their land use laws.
That's why I think ultimately it's gonna fall on the towns if somebody won't register.
But the database for the tax collection is the state will require that the tax collection database be maintained by the county. And I think, I think what we don't know about this, Rob, what's so difficult about it is how these hosts go in and out of business. They operate for 2 months and then they're quiet for 2 months. Then they're up for 3 more months and then they're quiet. So I think once we have a system, once we have some data to look at and evaluate to determine if that's something we could manage ourselves, or that we would never have the interest or skills to manage, I think that's what would make that decision for us.
Brenda, I have a question.
Yep.
Revenue distribution for each town versus fees for each town. So right now it looks like town or village is gonna get 30% of the taxes collected within that town. But then the fee that the town pays is the same for every town. So if I'm understanding correctly, if I only have 1 Airbnb in my town, I'm still paying $3,000, but I'm getting a lot less revenue than a town that has 50 Airbnbs versus something like sales tax that's just distributed, I think, based on population. So why the discrepancy, and everyone pays the same fee, but we get paid based on our actual revenues?
That's the Granicus fee is per municipality, and it's not based on how many you have in the municipality. So we're just passing that on.
Okay.
And it's a reduced fee based on cooperative cooperation amongst all the towns in the county.
Okay.
If you did it individually, it'd be a lot
A lot
more.
more.
They were over 6,000 for Chatham, their last proposal.
So you're still getting, and New Lebanon has a lot of Airbnbs, so I wasn't actually asking that question for me as far as fairness. The other question is annual chargeback from the treasurer's office. Is that how we do ambulance right now?
Yes.
But ambulance,
Workers' comp,
ambulance, you put as a line in the county budget and you collect it from our residents. That's how this is gonna work?
We're gonna put it in the chargeback back on the town, yeah.
But like the town, I'm not building this into my town budget.
No.
Okay, it's gonna be raised via county taxes.
Correct.
Excellent.
So my other question is, that maybe you answered it, but I guess I'm not clear on it. So I think Granicus does very specialized other things, correct, Brenda? Than just the thing that, the part that the county is going ahead and. So
I
if
think-
I,
Yeah, go ahead.
if I wanted to as a town to enter into other things they do, I think this was asked, but it wasn't clear. I pay them directly, or does it get added to the chargeback? Like, in other words, we.
You would negotiate a contract and pay that contract directly.
Anything additional is on the town.
That's what I thought, okay.
But those, again, I was just talking to Denal, those additional services aren't many. They'll help with collection.
Yeah,
they'll-
it's not that,
They'll do a few things for you. It's not that much.
no, it's not, but I
The
just.
three, they gave us some preliminary numbers last fall, and they really were compliance or collection. And they offer an online payment system, registration and payment system, and they offer a hotline. If you want to help, if you want a 24/7 hotline, if you want a number for your residents to call to complain about a level of activity or a type of activity or an unsafe activity, they offer that service.
And how often is Granicus going to continue to give you updated data on every town that has a new B&B, an Airbnb? Is it continual? Is it monthly? Do we know that? So they're going to give us an initial set of Airbnbs throughout the county, correct?
It's either weekly or monthly.
Weekly or monthly, they'll give you updates on it.
They're updating their data daily, but their reports to us are going to be weekly or monthly. And then we as a town or a village will also have a role to play in that, because if your town has a local law and you're registering people, then we're going to ask that as you register people, that you send that data into the county so that we can confirm that the county records are complete. And then there's the other piece. Remember, the Granicus address identification is going to be limited to those addresses that are published on web-based platforms. At least, I'd say 7 or 8 of the Airbnbs in my community are either through a local property manager or a realtor or maybe Facebook Marketplace. Any of those short-term rentals that the town identifies that Granicus is not identified will need to forward that information to the county on a monthly basis.
So another quick question, Brenda, if you want the towns to work with the county, which is totally fine, how do they get that information to the county? Is that going to also be on a website? So I can say to my building inspector, any new Airbnbs that come through you can just go onto this website and send it in, or are they just going to send an email in, or how's that going to work?
I'm going to defer to Jim on that, but my memory is that we were going to create a spreadsheet that the building or code officer or the designated person in your town would file with the county monthly. Is that correct, Jim?
Correct, yes.
So there'll be an
Email.
email address
Should be a
specific.
specific email.
Okay.
So
It's better to have a live document.
Yes.
I'm confused now because earlier I heard if someone comes to my building department to register, they're gonna send them away until they already have gone to the county and got a number. But now I'm hearing if they come to your town, you're gonna notify the county that they've come to your town.
I think you're talking about if there was somebody that wasn't in our data file
Correct.
that we don't know about,
Okay,
Right.
then you're gonna go on and email, and it will come directly to my office, and
Right.
we will make sure that they get registered.
But we're not doing anything with them. We're not allowed to take their application. We're just notifying you, hey, there's an
Correct.
unknown.
You should not, you can't give them a permit until they've registered.
Right, we can take their application, but we will wait to approve until we have county.
Our building department should be saying to that person, you need to contact the county, here's how to contact them, but then we're also gonna notify you just in case they
Yes,
don't
correct.
contact you. Okay, thank you.
And the monthly report will tie it all together. You'll know that the number's been assigned and that they're also registered for a permit in your community.
And the first data from Granicus will be released when, Brenda?
It's available now, and it is, that's one of the things that I think we addressed further on down the list. The training to access the data and to use the data is available now. So if you as a supervisor or mayor sent that information into Jim, it was sent to Granicus, and that person should have received an invitation and a link to training that would allow access to the database. But that's open now.
And that's the permitted database, or that's everybody that's advertising? It might
It's the
not.
it's the people that are identified as currently operating short-term rentals.
So just to clarify, Brenda, this is Ron. So Stuyvesant I do have access to Granicus database. Am I supposed to provide that to the county?
No, we have it.
Okay,
No,
you
you
have, you see what we see, in other words. Okay, all right. So in the future though, if I log in there and say somebody's registered with the town, then you would see that information too? If they're compliant with our zone?
Yeah.
Okay.
And is that database just the information that our building department said, here's the ones we have, or is that Granicus doing the research?
No, it's Granicus doing the research, yeah. Everybody should have access to that.
But if they're not yet registered with the town, at this point, we're gonna send them to you first and then get them in.
And
And
then,
Brenda,
and then what will happen, Tistria, is once you or the designated person in your town goes to the website, you may see that there are, let's say, 25 names that Granicus has identified as short-term rental operators, but you may only have 3 of those permitted in your town. So at that point, you may choose to, reach out via your own town letter to let them know that you require a permit to operate a short-term rental in New Lebanon.
Right. And that they have to go to the county first before they can get that permit.
Right.
Brenda, this document that you gave us is great. Is there a document that's like this that we could all stick on our website so we all have the same exact document for each town so there's no discrepancies?
Yes, and
Well-
I apologize again. I sent an update to this yesterday. And I'll make sure that you get the updated document first. I was going to talk to the rest of the occupancy committee. I thought we might do something that looked a little more polished for external distribution. This was just for an internal document, but yes, I think it'd be useful to have a common document for everybody to use.
Excellent. Thank you.
Could you email it out to us and it's all done?
Once the occupancy committee has approved it, yes.
Great.
Great.
Brenda, one more question. If we have Airbnb that's already registered with the town building department and now they need to go register with the county, that's the opposite. They've already registered with the town. So when they register with the county gives us that number. We just somehow add it to our permit number.
So we'll have to get a list. I had a list of those as of whenever I collected them, November,
Yeah.
December. We'll have to get an updated one.
Okay.
We'll build them into our side and then give you the
And then you
number.
can say to the building department, these ones that you already have, we now have them and here's the numbers. Okay.
I think there's 5 or 6 houses already have the registry.
And just so you'll see, on the next to the last page, it says the county will require that towns or villages submit a baseline report as soon as possible and subsequent monthly updates of permits granted. Again, that's so that we can make sure that the numbers are aligned.
Okay, that's great.
For those of us that already are in contract with one of these compliance companies, and we're gonna make the switch at some point, do you want us to send an updated list of what they're currently telling us for your records now? Or is
Yes,
that-
please.
Oh, yeah, that'd be useful.
Okay.
See if they've identified something that
All right.
Granicus.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
When's your contract?
You know, we'll do this on a fairly regular basis to keep everybody informed. It might be via email or other ways, but, as we develop this, we'll get more information out.
Well, thank you guys for all the work. Thank you,
Matt.
Brenda.
Document.
Yes,
Can I get a copy?
sure.
Thank you.
I'll send the updated copy to Kelly and she can send it around to the updated, because I made a couple of the language changes in there. So
Thank you, Brenda.
you're very
Thanks,
welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.